Hi everybody, here we are at Inspiring Chats with Nicky and Jax, and we have today with us Julie Hartell and we have Nick Elston. Welcome guys.
Hi there.
So I think if we just start with just finding out a little bit about your businesses. Julie, if we start with you first, just tell us a little bit about what you do so that we all know.
Yep, I'm Julie Hartell, as you've already said. I run the Mum Almighty, and the Mum Almighty is a mentoring program that I created and I molded just for mums that are thinking of either returning to their previous role that they had before they went on maternity leave, or whether they want to start a new pathway back into the workplace that they've never had, into a new industry, a new environment, or if they've adopted children or foster children or taken a career break, or if they've taken a long time off to care for sick family members and they've had that section of time or period of time away from the workplace and they haven't got that confidence or the self-belief that they should have when they need to go back to work. And a lot of mums, well actually 60% of mums, want to go back. They want to have that sense of purpose, and what I do is help them find the right pathway, find the right purpose that aligns with their passion and their skills and their achievements. And through my 3-month mentoring program, which is all done online, I help them achieve that by creating an action plan for them to follow, which has these little micro steps of actions for them to do. So yes, that's me, the Mum Almighty.
Fantastic, sounds brilliant. And Nick, tell us a little bit about your business.
So I'm an inspirational speaker on the lived experience of mental health. That's my job, as nuts as it sounds. It is a job, apparently. It does a good job. And through that, I've actually founded my own business called Forging People. Forging People is a new breed of people development. So we work on things that are human-centered people development. So things like speaking coaching, but from an emotional storytelling perspective. It's not presentation skills. It's not in the detail. It's very much about empowering people to tell their story, but actually tell their story not only to work through that themselves, but to deliver the value to any audience that they want to deliver that to. I think speaking remains my biggest therapy, and still I will say things that are just in my head in front of thousands of people because I feel the need to say it right there and then. And what I've learned since is that brutal honesty actually builds a real bridge of trust right from the beginning. So everything I'm about is all about those kind of different things. The name Forging People came from a line in my talk that we either let our adversities define us negatively for the rest of our days, or we allow it to forge something beautiful. We allow it to forge something powerful that never existed without you going through your stuff in the first place. And I think for me, that's what it's about, is turning people's adversities into something which is really exciting.
Yeah.
Using the same energy it takes to destroy us to actually push us forward. And I think there's a lot of power in that. And that's kind of what I'm about, really.
Nice.
So how did you tune into that yourself? Did you end up finding you were having to learn that for yourself, or did someone teach you?
No, it was something that I learned through a lot of error and some success,
Okay.
but a lot more error right at the beginning. In a very small nutshell, going back about 7-8 years ago now, I had kind of like a breakdown, a meltdown moment outside of a networking meeting. And speaking was my therapy. I decided 2 weeks later at the same event to speak about what had happened. It followed a childhood and teenage life of mental health challenges and mental illness in terms of obsessive compulsive disorder and generalized anxiety disorder. And the combination of those things could, as I said, I've built a reputation as a speaker saying things that people don't tend to say about that, but the nervous energy created by that can actually really drive you to be successful. And that's why you see a lot of kind of high energy environments like law. I do a lot of work in where you have an environment where that energy drives you to be successful by your own definition of the time, but you don't schedule recovery time. You put that mask on, and basically that was the point I found myself in. And speaking was my way forward. I didn't see anybody else talking about this stuff as a 6'4", 20-year-old stone bearded guy. Nobody else was doing that stuff back at the time. So I thought I just wanted to, initially it was a selfish move. I stood up, it's cheap therapy, literally, couldn't afford therapy. Literally I stood up and just told my story. The one thing that changed for me was the dynamic shifted when it became not about me anymore, it was about everybody else. That people were finding value in what I had to say.
Yes.
That's where it turned from me into them, and that's then what turned into my career as I see it today.
Nice.
Amazing. And Julie, how about you? Where did it all come from for you?
Similarly, as what Nick was saying, what he called an error, I suppose. I mean, all the best people learn from their mistakes. You know, Steve Jobs did. So what happened with me is originally I had a corporate career working for a bank, and I then, with my husband, decided to have children, and the first one was so easy that we thought, what's all the fuss about, let's have number two. Had number two, and number two was nothing like number one. And what number two brought was postnatal depression for a number of years, which I hadn't realized that's what I was suffering with. So I went down a very dark path and didn't reach out for help and didn't know where to go to get support. Tried giving my baby back to the midwives. They didn't want her. I actually didn't connect with her, which was quite sad at the time. No, I can say it now and laugh about it, but at the time, you know, you think you're doing the right thing because you don't feel like you're working as a mother. You think you're a failure. So I was a failure as a wife, failure as a mum, failure at work. So when I went back to work after maternity leave, the experience wasn't very positive, and I felt that the process that I was put through by the HR department, the process that they put women through when they come back, it's like you've just popped to the loo and you're just going to carry on as normal, and there's your job, there's your seat. It's just the same as when you were, 9 months ago or 12 months ago. And it wasn't like that because my identity had changed, my priorities had changed, my focus had changed, my temperament, my 0 to 60 anger had changed. And so I struggled to cope, and that came out in anger and feeling all of these negative beliefs about myself, but not telling anyone. And I took it out on those closest to me, which was really upsetting for them. And then that caused a little bit of a mini breakdown. And I eventually called my mum, who came up from Devon, because I live in Bristol. She came up from Devon and persuaded me to seek help from a GP, who then explained to me, this is all quite normal, you're suffering from this, and take a break, so just switch off. And unfortunately at the time they persuaded me to take antidepressants, which actually just switched me off from everything. So from going from caring about what people thought of me as a mum and a wife, I then went to caring about nothing and nobody. So I did turn into quite a numb individual, and still not a very nice person. And that sort of made our marriage teeter on the edge, and my sanity was questioned. And thankfully it all got saved because my husband persuaded us to go to marriage counselling. They persuaded me to come off the antidepressants and learn to deal with it in different ways by talking about it. Just as Nick said, talking about it, being open and talking to other people made the topic become a normal topic, and the feelings that other mums were feeling and weren't talking about were just normalized. And that process of going back to work and having to speak to, in my experience, it was like a 19-year-old girl who did a standard back to work interview process with me, didn't work because she didn't ask about me and my mind and what I was thinking and how I was feeling and did I need help with anything. All she wanted to know was my chair all right? Did it tick a box for occupational risks and things? Was my seat and my desk ergonomic enough for me? And that was it. Tick, yeah, you're back in. So I suppose that's what drove me then to create this. But just to go on slightly, I know I'm going on, but I then decided that I wanted to work part-time, and I asked to go part-time, and that employer said no. And so I chose to leave and take a much lower paid job doing something completely different, working in a school as a teaching assistant. And although it was rewarding working with children, I felt completely that I'd lost any influence, any impact, any purpose to what I was doing. And I was surrounded by other mums who had made the same decision to ditch their corporate careers or whatever career they had, because they felt it was the right thing to do for their children and their family. And for me, I think that's not always the right decision for everyone. And we don't always have to put our children first. We are allowed, and we should be allowed, to put ourselves first. And we're not reminded of that. No one tells us that. And we just go along with, well, everyone else is doing it. The dad's the breadwinner. The mum has to take the lower paid job, ironing, cleaning, whatever it is, working in a school, part-time hours. And the level of income that you can achieve is not very good. And so when I worked in the school, I realised that I was surrounded by these mums that felt the same way as me, and they were quite upset. And so I found myself having time with them at playtime and lunchtimes, trying to enthuse them, to motivate them to do something else. Well, what is it you want to do? And I talked to them about what they really wanted to do, what's their passion, and how to align that and create a little pathway for them to follow. And miraculously, it's lovely to say that 3 of them have actually left. One of them was a teacher, and now she has her own yoga school and teaches children yoga, which is great. She's doing it all online now. And so it was my husband that said, well, why don't you do this as a job? You'd be really good at that. And of course, you question yourself and think, oh, no, I could never do this, you know. And I eventually decided he was right, and put the things in place, everything in place to create my own mentoring business. And so quietly, while I was working in the school for 2 years, I built this business and got everything in the right place, and eventually went 100% full time.
Brilliant.
And amazing. So you're mentoring.
Sorry, carry on, Nicky.
Yeah, so you're mentoring people to get to find a job that they really love, or get, you know, follow their passion.
Yeah, I mean, they might already know what they want to do, but just don't know what steps to follow to get there. So if they don't know, then I can help them work that out based on their achievements and what they enjoy doing. But for a lot of women, it's very normal to feel stuck and overwhelmed because you've got so much other noise going on, from children, the housework, money problems. There's so many things whirring around in your brain. And we multitask, you know, in our brains, not just here, but physically as well. There's never really enough time to concentrate on what you really want. And that's what I do. It's like going to the toilet on your own without children calling your name when you mentor.
That bliss.
Yeah, bliss. It's just you and me time.
Yeah.
So that's the analogy.
Yeah, and I think that what's really great, because like both of you, because Nick, you were saying the same thing. So it's like, at first with you, Nick, you were saying that it was helping you. It was like your therapy, but then you realised it was other people's therapy. And that's the same with you, Julie. It's like both of you, what you're doing is you're saying to people, this is how people feel. This is real. This is, you know, like
it's normal.
Yeah. And I think it's so important for people to hear that. And like Nick, with you saying that you're helping, and are people coming up to you after one of your talks now? Do they come up to you, or do they get in touch with you afterwards to tell you that it's
both? Actually, is interesting. That's an interesting point, because what I found was very early, I made the conscious decision to stay in the lived experience niche, which means I can partner with lots of different solution bringers, lots of different resources that can actually help people in different ways.
Yeah.
What I found was the lived experience niche really boosts engagement in what's going on already. Not exclusively, but especially with men. They're not very quick in coming forward with wellbeing initiatives, let's put it like that.
Yeah.
So what I found was that if I have taken the active decision not to fix people, for want of a better term, I therefore must have a moral responsibility to actively signpost. And that's where I got good. So I trained as mental health first aid trainer. I become a mental health champion for Time to Change, ambassador for Mind and Mental Health UK, lots of different organisations, as well as knowing lots of different trusted therapists and solution providers around me as well.
Yeah.
And what I did, to answer your question, when I'm going to speak to an audience, when I ask for open questions, relatively few and far between due to the sensitivity of the subject. But I can't go in and raise those questions with people without having a responsibility to stick around. In the speaking world, there's a lot of big egos. They will just speak and go.
Yeah.
That's not me at all. I will speak and immerse myself in the event. I've been at events all day sometimes just to immerse myself in that. to speak to people one-to-one afterwards, because people will come up and speak to you one-to-one. But then there's also another section of people that won't speak to you on the day in person. You'll get the email maybe even a week later. I really wish I had the courage to speak to you, Nick. I wanted to speak to you about this. So again, I've got a kind of a catch-all system where whoever I speak to, whoever I engage with, they have somewhere to go. That essentially in life, people don't want to be fixed. They're not coming to me to be fixed.
No.
They're coming to me to be heard, because we don't feel heard. Now more than ever, we don't genuinely feel heard. So when I do hear what they say, when I do signpost, most of the time, 90% of the time, they find their own way forward. Because I think that's the way. The problem we have is we try and feel the need to fix people, but actually then we take the burden of that on us as well. We become speakers, we become mentors, we become mental health first aiders, we become carers, because either we've had experiences of that ourselves, or because we have such a strong passion, because we're empathic by nature. But that means that we will take on the burden of other people. In fact, there's more challenges right now. The contacts I work a lot with contact centres. A lot of the problems I'm working with now are team managers, not the end line. It's the team managers who are now got the team coming to them with all their challenges. So we need to ask the question: who looks after the people that looks after people? Because actually, it's a forgotten gap, and it's the same in the caring community. My dad's a carer for vulnerable adults. Again, they have lots of protection. Above him, they have lots of protection. Who looks after him? And I think, there's a kind of a forgotten ream of people in between, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's really interesting that. Sorry, I've lost my train of thought. My dog's just come back in the room.
I thought I could hear something. I don't want to say anything. I thought it'd be personal.
What I was going to say was that it's that need to fix people, isn't it? But what you're both doing is saying to people it's okay, and sometimes people just need to hear. I remember for me, like if I was having a bad time, when I was having a really low time, all I wanted people to say to me was, it must be really tough. I didn't want anybody to fix me or say, oh, you'll be fine, it'll be, that was it. So both of you must, so you must find that as well, Julie, when you're working with these mums as well.
You get, you do get, I did a talk for you, Jackie, at the networking meeting last week. And I've had 4 calls, personal calls, where they found my number and just said how my talk resonated with them. Admittedly, it wasn't my story that I was sharing. It was about about being authentic and being you and how to be yourself. And I've had quite a few calls about that, how it touched them. And they're hoping that I do the talk again. So I need to book it in, really. But it is about getting that acknowledgement, though, for them. That they feel that someone else gets them, and that's really important, even if nothing's fixed nor fixable. That someone else feels like them is enough, and then they're not alone as well.
Definitely.
It's so important.
That's the thing that I've found, actually. It's the most dangerous place for anybody is when they lose hope or the hope of something better. And I think that's a kind of the limbo phase. And Julie mentioned it as well, and it was something in my experience too. The worst thing was never feeling bad. The worst thing was feeling nothing, was living under a haze of, to cut off feeling one way, you cut off feeling the other, because you can't have both. So by default, you're kind of making yourself numb, like what Julie said. And I think that's the point where people start to lose hope. And so the quote that I always use everywhere is written on my office wall, as well as every storm runs out of rain. Because actually people just sometimes want a bit of hope that whatever they're going through right now is going to end. Like literally every problem we've ever faced has come to an end. The problem we've got, especially kind of right now, we're kind of recording this during the COVID-19 pandemic, that we don't know what the end looks like, let alone when it is. So how are we expected to deal with that? And I think that's why our main focus right now is to make sure we live in Groundhog Day in the best possible way. Actually, we get up and do our best every single day, and then that's it, and not assume too much into the future, because it's the assumption that gets us. It's not the reality, it's the assumption. Things like, I watch the Prime Minister's update every evening, but I switch off from everything else because it's just speculation. Managing that kind of, so we can, it's not a case of ignoring reality, it's a case of actually managing our immersion in what's going on.
And I also noticed that you have written on your website that opportunities are everywhere. And so if you aren't where you want to be, change your attitude. And I think that's really good as well. It's kind of you know, and also noticing what opportunities we can take during this time too.
Oh, absolutely.
Doing things that we haven't done for a long time.
Yeah.
You know, doing things that are on the to-do list.
I mean, there's always that. There's always a payoff to anything. I know a story that I share is when I first went into the realms of self-employment. I was working 36 hours a week for Tesco delivering groceries. Now I had a choice. I could either have taken the attitude, I ain't a delivery driver, lob their food down and run off in a sulk, or you actually see the fact that you treat people like humans, you have conversations, opportunities are everywhere. I got 5 paid speaking gigs off of delivering to lawyers' houses. I went into the canteen, I saw that the Tesco magazine was asking for mental health articles. I wrote into the internal staff magazine, would you be interested in doing a shoot on me? They come down, sent a photographer, sent a journalist, so I got promo out of it. The article ran that well that it took it to the public magazine, and that was what got me out of Tesco. So Tesco got me out of Tesco. Thanks, Tesco. The point is that sometimes in life you're not where you want to be, but it doesn't change the way that we go forward. It doesn't change the positive intent. And actually, there are opportunities everywhere. And it's something I say to a lot of people is that we need to follow the money. We need to make sure that we kind of have a business, but we also need to take a step back and check our intentions, because a year into doing that, I was 36 hours a week for Tesco, 36 hours a week doing my own thing and trying to get off the ground. So actually what I was doing that for, to provide a better income for my family, a family I was never seeing.
Yeah.
So again, we need to kind of take that step back sometimes and check our intentions and where we're going. Sometimes
it's about your why, isn't it, Nick? What that
Massively.
was your why.
Yeah, that's exactly why.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No.
So Julie, I was going to ask you as well about self-belief. So what is it about having children that makes us suddenly become sort of mush and lose our confidence and lose our belief in ourselves?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
these
like
are, you know.
Yeah, I have this little analogy that I use, that when you give birth, you actually give birth twice, but you give birth to a baby and then you give birth to this invisible gremlin, and I call it like the guilt gremlin, and it's a guilt gremlin that can either sit on your shoulder or shuffles below the desk wherever you're sat if you're at work, and it just throws up this negative thought that comes into your mind and makes you question everything. And it's like the guilt gremlin also brings with it self-doubt, negativity, guilt, and there's belief that you can't do things. It brings anxieties, which basically is just all pack of lies. But because it keeps badgering at you, and you start to maybe think, well, maybe there's some truth to what this, that I'm, you know, to those negative voices. Then it must be true, because I keep hearing it, I keep thinking it, and you question how you're being. Exactly, yeah, you burden yourself with it.
Yeah.
Whereas really, you should be going like that with a knife, stabbing the gremlin. But you actually have to turn around and face it and think, is there any evidence? Look and be curious for the evidence to back up those beliefs and back up the thoughts that you're having. And if there isn't anything there, then that's how you win over the gremlin. Because if there's nothing there, logic tells you then it can't be true. But mums are really good at assuming and presuming what others think about them as well. And you know,
totally, yeah.
And a lot of things can be just completely made up in our brains just by the way someone looks. But again, if you use the logic of, right, what evidence is there to back up what they think of me, and if they're thinking about what I'm wearing, there's no logic, don't believe it and push it away. But we let it tend to fester in our minds, and that's when it starts to embed itself in our brain. And what you have to do is retrain your brain to believe different things that are more positive about yourself.
And change our mindset. And often it's hard to do that on our own, isn't it? So sometimes it's useful to get help from somebody.
I mean, even with my mentoring clients, what they'll do, I mean, I speak to them on a one-to-one basis every week for 13 weeks. But it's very normal for them to contact me and say, oh, I don't think I'm right for this. It's not going to work. I don't, you know, they'll have those little just feelings where they don't feel that they're the right person, or they don't feel that they have the right abilities to do it. And it can be just as little as their husband maybe, or their partner, making them feel like that, but they didn't mean to do it. It's just something they said
Triggered them. Yeah.
And they could have taken it completely the wrong way.
Yeah, when you're feeling sensitive, everything could be the wrong way.
Absolutely. We're very good at that as women. We'll put something the wrong way, hold on to it and not tell anyone, and put them in the doghouse for it. Like Nick?
I think what is interesting what you're saying. I genuinely think there's a couple of extra layers we have in the UK on top of that. That you have, there's definitely cultural and generational challenges into when it comes to self-care, self-awareness. They're actually considered quite selfish pursuits in the UK. Been fortunate enough to deliver my keynote talk on anxiety to lots of different countries, to lots of different nationalities, and actually not a lot of other countries have a challenge with kind of blowing their own trumpet, for one of the better words, or actually just trying things without that fear of kind of the brutal fear of being judged and dismissed and everything else that goes through our heads. I genuinely think in the UK we have been brought up on the stiff upper lip, man up kind of element. Even as girls, you get told to man up. It's crazy. So I think when you're brought up on that culture, actually it's really difficult to change that even in one generation. So I think we are also fighting against our preconditioning too.
Because you think that that's something to do, like I'm like just talking about the mothers here. Do you think that's something to do with, you know, like in Italy, for example, you know, they've got the extended family that all sort of step in and, you know, look after the kids or whatever that. So do you think that makes it easier for people because they've got...
I don't know, because that was the last thing I wanted, Jackie. I didn't want someone else to step in and make me feel like I was incapable, but that was just personal view.
Yeah.
I actually didn't want my mum anywhere near me when I had the kids. When I had my first one, yes, because I was in a good mental state. Yeah. Second one, didn't want any help. Didn't, you know, I can do this on my own. Even though I was not coping, I wouldn't ask for help. And clearly I needed it, but it would have made me feel like I'm even worse. Look at me. I need help from outside to have a baby, sort of thing. So I don't know. I don't know if I'd be able to cope very well if I was living in Italy and having coachloads of family holding the baby, and I'd think that they were holding it wrong, feeding it wrong. Don't touch them like that. Don't get the chocolate. You know, it would probably raise my anxiety.
I think, speaking from the other side of the camp, from a male perspective, this is something that's really interesting. And I've had this conversation with Julie before. So when I run monthly speaking academies in Bristol, when we're post-zombie apocalypse, I'll kick back off again. But what I find is when I speak on, especially stage and conference level, that 80% of the speakers are male. It's not that great. when I run my speaking academy days, 80% of the audience are female. So what I think the difference is, and when I've been working with people like women in accountancy and women in property and speaking at their groups about this subject, I think it's really important to say the one difference is perfectionism. Men are prepared to mess up. This is a huge stereotype, but go with me. Whereas women are actually wait for more of a perfection moment. They want everything to be perfect before they step up. And I think actually what you find is the truth is somewhere in between. And that's why the statistics are very kind of skewed either way. Somewhere in between is the truth. That if some of the, like Julie, some of the kind of the fantastic ladies has come through my group, now they're kind of speaking at events. The one thing that was stopping them was self-belief and confidence. And what we were just talking about was culturally, we're stopping that. For both sexes, but especially for women. So it's kind of redressing that balance. But for me, it's important to say, from a male perspective, the one difference as I see it is the fact that men are prepared to mess up more than women who want to be more of a perfected state before they reach anywhere near a stage.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's probably right.
I think that is true too. Definitely.
They hate saying it's right to a man.
I know, it's very easy to sort of have ideas about things and think I'm not going to do it until I know it's going to be perfect.
All the ducks lined up in a row.
Exactly. Procrastination.
With your speaking academy, what does that look like then? What do you do then?
So So basically, it majors down onto emotional storytelling. That's the theme. So what I try to get people to do, and it's interesting, I always give people the caveat or the get out of saying you can make stuff up. Nobody ever does.
Okay.
There's 3 exercises I run in the morning. Julie's been through them. So the first one is I want people to stand up and speak about for 1 minute something that they hate, as in give it everything you've got, something that really kind of angers you. Then I get them to speak about something that makes them sad, and most times people they'll always share the truth, but it'll be about grief or loss or something they've never felt safe enough to share. Then we go into 1 minute about something that makes them happy.
Yeah.
Then the rest of the day flows into more about public speaking and delivering a story. But the most crucial part is that morning where actually we get the trust of the room. Really strong relationships are felt, but actually you see the power for using emotional storytelling in every sense. So people will come if they're in a bad place in a relationship. They want to be heard in a relationship. Sometimes it could be if they want to network it better, or sales pitches and stuff. Because if you wrap your personal story around your offering, it becomes bulletproof because nobody else is exactly like you doing exactly the same thing. Yeah. But the one thing that we're scared of is to show ourselves, is to tell the truth, the real truth. And that's why, because I've seen the power and the transformation in that, that's why I now teach that, because I can see it in other people. We can either get owned by our stories or we can own them. And then when we own them, we can use it exactly in our own power. By the end of the day, people come away empowered, but also with a direction on where they want to go with that as well.
And upset.
And upset. It is. Look, there's no kind of, without giving the game away too much, it is an emotional day, because actually people are sharing things they've not shared ever to anyone, because they feel safe. And that's why I've always got a wellbeing practitioner in there to do some kind of chill out sessions at the end of the morning, because it can get really, really heavy. Again, morally responsible, and make sure everything's in place to catch people if they're feeling that way. But what I found most fascinating, I give people the out of saying, you can make stuff up. I don't know this. But they never do, because actually they want to be heard. It goes back to the basics again. Everyone wants to be heard and understood.
And it's easy to talk in the end about your own experience if you let yourself. It's almost easier to talk about what's gone on for you rather than make something up, especially emotionally or passionately.
What's interesting though, sorry to interject, is I feel privileged to be a part of this speaking academy that Nick's running, and it's still running now, and I urge you to attend. It's amazing, life-changing. But to see other people who have a real, because it's not about the egos, as Nick said. There's people there that some are frightened to speak out or even say their name or say anything, and for them to then stand at the front and tell you a 5-minute story, either made up or real, has everybody in tears, because they've just gone through mentally to get up there and stand in front of complete strangers and say something. It's amazing. And we have forged friendships from that speaking academy. It's amazing.
Yeah,
thank you, Jules.
I suppose
excuse me.
No.
I think there's a real superpower in vulnerability. I've done a lot of kind of sharing on this week, that vulnerability is the one thing that we're frightened of. There was a study done that public speaking was a greater fear than death. We fear ridicule more than dying. It's crazy what we're fighting against. Human flaws all over the place. But anyway, vulnerability is a superpower, because actually if you lay it all on the line, if you tell people exactly what's going on, not only does the world know how to react to you, so you can actually truly live a life on your terms, or if you're not doing that, by default, you're living a life on somebody else's terms. But when you're completely vulnerable and you give everything you got, you do become untouchable, because nobody has got anything on you.
No.
But we're afraid of doing that. We're really afraid of letting all that go. And I mean, Julie is also in the brutally honest category, the same as I like to be. And actually, I think there's a lot of power in that, because that's what really sets, I guess, my piece apart in the speaking world, is that anybody can get up and speak about mental health and solutions and lots of different things. But actually, when you bring in the lived experience behind that and actually deliver it in a way which is completely unabridged, unfiltered, and I deliver to schools, prisons, it's not just business, it's universities. It's really fascinating. It works every single time, because all you want to do is, it's kind of like, if I show you mine, you'll show me yours. So I lay it all on the line, people open up right back.
Yeah.
It's that easy. But that's the thing we're afraid of most.
So that goes back to actually that talk that you were doing the other day, Julie, which was all about being authentic. And that's it, isn't it? The key is when you're dealing with people that you can tell are being authentic.
Yeah.
It just helps so much.
Yeah. And everyone thinks they're authentic, but they probably are not. Yeah. But it's a hard thing to fathom out, but you have to notice when you're being inauthentic to be authentic.
Yeah. No.
I think a good test is always kind of, I always quote country music songs, as Julie knows, big country music fan. But it's, who are you when no one's looking? Actually, when you've got no one to live up to, no expectations, no environment to live up to, what are you truly about then? And I think that conversation you can have with yourself is, as I said many times before, I believe we have all the answers. We just don't ask ourselves the right questions. Yeah. And if we do ask ourselves the right questions, we're sometimes scared of the truth. Because actually some questions are actually a lot more challenging to sort out. It's easier to stay, you look at things like toxic relationships, it's easier to stay in a position of pain and frustration than it is to do something about it.
Yeah.
And you can see, you just using that example, exactly why people stay exactly where they are, because it's scary when you push past your comfort zone. You need to continually keep pushing past your comfort zone. But
yeah, it's better.
As Julie said, I could go about this for ages, so I'm going to keep quiet now.
No, but it's really good. It's really, it's better the devil you know sometimes, isn't it? Just like stay where you are, because then you're safe even if you're not enjoying it. Whereas if you take that leap of faith and
well,
then you have to face your demons, don't you?
Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, even with things like the basics, like when I talk a lot about recovery with a small R, how do we recover every day to make sure we're recharged to go again the day after? So part of that is actually asking people, what do you love to do? And actually, most of the time they say, I like to do this with such and such. And actually, it's nothing about them on their own. They associate happiness with other people, so therefore we give it away. What about you? You on your own, if I give you 2 hours now, what do you want to do with that? I used to ask that question, what do you like to do when no one's looking? But I had some really dodgy answers. So never do a gig in Germany, that's all I'm going to say.
But don't you think that, the one bonus from this sort of lockdown now is that people are actually stuck with themselves and they're spending time doing things that they like doing, that they perhaps haven't done for years, painting or
it's an
getting out and walking and noticing the countryside that they haven't noticed before.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would love that people could see this as an opportunity rather than a prison sentence, really. This is a perfect opportunity to try things out that they've never done before, that they can do from their homes. They can read something that they can concentrate on, or try something out, watch something that they've always wanted to watch. It is a golden opportunity, and the more people that see it that way, the better the world will be. That's what I think.
Yeah, and it's a mindset thing then, isn't it? Because you can decide how you're going to see it, but if you can see it from where you've just said, then we could all dance in our living rooms like you, Julie, because I've seen
that video then.
Yes, I watched that as well. Yeah, you've got a very willing husband to get involved with that.
You don't need antidepressants when you can dance in your living room.
No, I had to do a TikTok with my daughters, and we were doing. Oh my God, it was hysterical. I mean, but it's all
brilliant.
But then when you put it all together, it was like, oh, nice.
Yeah. Our children have become editing suite experts, haven't they?
Yeah.
Just entertain me, Mum.
Yeah. So, well, that's one of the things was going to be kind of like, what are the tips for, so especially for people who are going through, like if people are anxious, this could present a lot of anxiety in this time. Different types of anxiety. So what could be some tips for people that what tips that you could think of that could actually, so Nick, you've already done a blog, you've done a 10 ideas.
Yeah, so I did a blog and a video, which you can find across my social channels. But I think for me right now, especially for people that maybe are working from home as well, I think it's a case of three things really. Setting boundaries, but three different areas. Firstly, setting boundaries on your workspace. Try and work separately from the space that you relax. Or if you can't do that, I'm on a dining room table because I've been kicked out of my office by my wife. So when I've finished this, I will pack it all up. So when I sat on the sofa later on, I will not see it. Then mentally switch off. The second one is to set boundaries with your time. So I'm still working my working week and being visible, keep on keeping on, doing all that kind of stuff. It's actually then mentally I've got the focus on what I'm doing, but then I also switch off my set off time so I can make sure I get that downtime. Thirdly, I set boundaries in terms of space. That I'm a natural introvert. I need time on my own. So right now I'm managing that very well. I recharge in my own space. So I need to set boundaries where I actually say, even though we're all in the same house for ages now, I need some time where I'm just doing my own thing. And I'll go off and have a bath, play on the PlayStation, watch a movie, whatever that may be. But make sure I ring fence that to protect my own mental health.
Yeah, no.
And then, Julie, what about you? Because obviously for mums with young kids, it's a slightly different situation, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I would have agreed with Nick. It's choose your time to check into news, really. I would have said that checking in just before, if you're somebody that cooks dinner, I would read the news or watch the news just before you start cooking dinner, because the physical movement of cooking dinner helps you digest mentally what you've just heard and what you've just seen, or go for a walk just after you've checked into the news as well. And you can mentally digest all of what Boris has just told us. And especially for mums, it's really important to schedule in when you're actually wanting to do your worry and anxiety time, because no matter how many times I say question your anxiety and your self-belief and the thoughts that you're having, it's easy for me to say, and it's easy for me to tell someone to do that, but do they actually do it? It's not, putting that into action is not always as easy as it seems. So try and schedule in when you actually have that worry time, because it is a good superpower because we're good at scheduling things in. We compartmentalize as women. We can, have mental to-do lists. So have a time in the day when you're going to have those negative thoughts and deal with them at that time. And then once you've done that, put them in a shoebox, put them in the loft, in a mental shoebox, in the mental loft. And you've given yourself permission to worry at that time, a specific time of the day, and then you carry on with the rest of your day. It is hard for mums also, because you've got to try and explain it to your children. Obviously there's different ways of doing that with different ages of children, and also with different characters and personalities of children. Some will take it in, some won't. Some will take on your worry if you show that worry as well. So you really do need to consider how you're coming across and the words that you're saying and the tone of what you're saying. For mine I've got two girls, 12 and 10, and the 10-year-old's got more common sense than the 12-year-old. The 12-year-old's not really taking much in apart from what's on her phone and on TikTok. 10-year-old will watch the news, and we will allow her to watch the news because she's interested. She asks the questions, and I don't want to lie, but I'm choosing the channels for watching the news that won't panic her. So I'll find that the BBC News doesn't panic her, but I'll find CNN and Sky News does panic. So I find BBC News is very factual, straight down the line, and she understands it, and then she'll ask us questions and we'll just have an open discussion about it. But for the younger ones, there's some great YouTube videos out there to explain what COVID-19 means, and some great animations that our school has actually provided for us for the younger ones. Those are brilliant.
Excellent. And just keeping them busy.
Keeping them busy, yes. But do you know what? When this first started, they said, we'll make cakes every day and scones. And I thought, oh gosh, I'm going to be in the kitchen with an apron on, covered in flour. But what we've decided to do is, instead of being there to supervise them, we decided that they need to make mistakes and learn from their mistakes, a bit like us, a bit like what Nick says, we learn from our mistakes. So I've just given them a recipe, a method and ingredients, made sure they've got all the bits, and they've gone and done it themselves. And it's worked every single time. There's been a few arguments between them.
Yeah.
They've made scones, they've made fairy cakes, Easter cakes, they've made banana loaf. It's been amazing. I've even had a coffee brought up to me in bed.
Brilliant.
Wow.
So a bit of independence.
It's been amazing. Yeah, but I did have hundreds and thousands poured on my coffee, which wasn't too nice. It was like a unicorn coffee, apparently. You know, that's great, because we would never have done that. I would have normally been there going, no, don't do that, don't touch this, don't touch. But I've just let them do it. And as long as it's not burning down, then we're okay.
Yeah. Yes.
So.
What's that? Oh, that's brilliant. But before we go, so Julie, you've got a book that's coming out. So I think you should mention your book.
Oh, yes, thank you. I had forgotten about that. Yes, so I've written a book that's on Amazon Kindle and Amazon Bookshelf as we speak, and it's called The Ultimate Anxiety Breakthrough Bible. So what this is about 55 pages of cognitive behavioral therapy techniques that are really super effective for not just women but men as well, but it's more directed at the women, simply because it's broken into 4 sections. So there's sections on how to deal with perfectionism, how to get around that, how to stop saying yes to everything, dealing with self-beliefs and doubts, and then the last section is all about putting an action plan in place for something that you've always wanted to do, whether it's a job or whether it's to go and learn to dance or learn a musical instrument. So yeah, I've created that to help women to it's basically a self-help one, so you can download it or you can buy the paperback version, and there are worksheets inside there to help you as a step-by-step guide all the way through.
Brilliant. Congratulations.
Sounds amazing. Sounds very empowering.
Yeah,
it's good to sort of, you know, have tools that you can learn and do yourself.
Yeah, and it's all about being repetitive. It's not just a book for once, oh, I did it, it worked, and then next week you go back to being negative again. It's all about retraining your brain, and I say that in the book. You've got to keep doing it repetitively.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
Stuff.
And Nick, have you got any the event, because I think you've got some up and coming events, haven't you?
Yeah, always lots on. Always trying to keep busy. Always. So so for the speaking stuff, you can find me at nickelston.com. For the business stuff, it's forgingpeople.com. So I'm taking, in the meantime, especially, I'm taking elements of the Speaking Academy online. So I've got the first one, which is on the 22nd of April. That's going to be basically a 4-hour workshop of the overview of the Speaking Academy, all around emotional storytelling, interactive, of course. I don't do all the work. And the one the week after, on the 29th, is to help you go pro as a speaker. I see a lot of amazing speakers that just haven't got the idea to commercialize that, to turn that into a business, to help it promote their business or their calls. So I run a GoPro session to help people go and turn their speaking into a business.
Nice. Very good.
Thank you.
Incredible. I might be there on the 22nd. I like the sound of it. I'm going to give it a go.
Good stuff.
Well, it was just brilliant. We'll put your Facebook, your websites and everything up so that people can see them.
Thank you.
I think I can do that now quickly, if you bear with doing a Miranda thing. So if anybody's watching,
say as well, Jackie, Nick Elston is going to be talking at my networking group on Thursday as well, delivering his vulnerability talk.
Oh, I'm coming to that group. Yeah, it's the Career Steer Squad group. So I'm really looking forward to hosting it and having Nick there. So it'll be great.
It's going to be fun.
Brilliant.
It will be.
There's the information for everybody.
Thank you.
Quick screenshot if anybody would like, and okay, and then I'll stop showing, and put this back to like that. Technology, fab, love it. Anyway, that was brilliant. Really enjoyed that.
That flew by, really flew by.
So interesting. Lovely to hear from you both.
It was great. Thank you.
Loved it. Thank you very much. Thanks for having us on.
You're welcome. Thank you both very much.
Yeah.
Looking forward to watching.
Take care. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.